Peugeot's second generation 2008 is a small SUV that offers an arguably more sophisticated take on the kind of little urban crossover style design popularised by cars like Nissan's Juke. Supermini-based, it offers all the advantages of that compact runabout you were thinking of, together with the kind of added space, style and light off-road drivability you probably never expected to be able to enjoy on a small car budget. This Mark II design gets a new platform, a fresh look and a completely redesigned interior, all of it targeting what the brand hopes will be a younger buyer. There's an all-electric version too.
You might hope for a measured, sensible response from motor industry products in times of worldwide pandemic and recession. Instead, the market's fastest growing segment is for cars like this, trendy, fashion-led little SUVs. And this one, at first glance, looks particularly appealing, Peugeot's second generation 2008. There's a chance you might already be familiar with this model line since it's been around since 2013. The original 2008 wasn't the cohesive piece of product design we have here though. Instead, it was more of a Supermini on stilts, launched to test a market that had originated in modern form with the Nissan Juke 3 years earlier. The donor small Supermini in question was then, and it still is, Peugeot's 208, and that first 2008 sold well for its French maker, although more because of segment growth than product excellence. It gave the brand's designers, though, some thinking space to consider what this class of customer really ought to have. Something quite groundbreaking, as it turned out, when this car was launched in late 2019, the option of an all-electric powertrain. Now, that's what we're trying here, but fortunately, you don't have to have it. This car's all-new CMP platform, shared with PSA Group class stablemates, the Vauxhall Mocha and the DS3 Crossback, that's flexible enough to allow for all kinds of engines, including various non-electrified ones, an old-school Blue HDI diesel and the PureTech 3-cylinder petrol units that most customers choose. Now, those conventional engines aren't very different from those used in the previous generation model, but carryovers otherwise end right there, as you'll discover after sampling this second generation model's very different 3D iCockpit cabin. There's also a completely different level of safety provision and media connectivity to what was available before. So more of what you want and less perhaps of what you don't. And that explains this Mark II model's generally slightly lower level of potential rough road competence. It's a long way from being the most affordable contender in this segment, but it does lay a strong claim to being one of the most thoroughly engineered. So, time to try it. There's lots of interest here, whether you choose the combustion engine version of this Peugeot or the all-electric E2008 derivative that we're trying today. In place of the original 2008 model's cobbled together crossover confection, this second generation car is a design that immediately feels tauter and more mature, with a drive demeanour that suits its now slightly larger size. Yet, you might still struggle a little to exactly pigeonhole this little Peugeot's raison d'etre. The small, low-set steering wheel with its wrist flick action seems to promise sportiness. The purposeful looks and the slightly higher driving position are mildly suggestive of all-wheel drive capability. And the light steering and the big glass area are the kind of thing that you'd find in a small MPV. Has the French maker created from all of this an endearing piece of compact family transport, or a car that still can't quite make up its mind what it wants to be? Well, we're not quite sure, but we think a lot of people will probably like it, and this is why. First off, because the slightly higher, more commanding driving position and the mildly SUV-style feel that are on offer here have been achieved without too many obvious changes to the nippy and well-balanced handling of the 208 Supermini from which this car is largely derived. Body control is much better than we remember it being in the Mark I 2008 model, and that car certainly couldn't replicate this one's eagerness to hug the road surface and turn accurately into sharper corners at speed. But by and large, you don't choose any sort of SUV with priorities to drive the thing on its door handles. So we were keen to see how this 2008 would cope with the more pressing priority of dealing with the day-to-day dramas of a crossover's usual suburban habitat. Peugeot's usually pretty good at delivering the kind of fluid ride quality that you need in that kind of environment, and with low spec and mid-range models on 16 or 17-inch wheels, that's pretty much what you get. The bigger 18-inch rims that you have to have and you can't change on the top derivatives though, that many will want, the GT line version and this top GT spec variant, don't do the damping any favours. They amplify road undulations and tarmac tears in a very ungallic way. Yes, those big diamond cut rims look great, but we'd very much counsel you to try before you buy. We mentioned this small steering wheel. That is an integral part of something that'll grab your attention as soon as you set off in this car, the unusual iCockpit dash setup that Peugeot has been challenging convention with for some time now. Now this requires the curious need to view the instrument dials above the wheel rim here rather than through the wheel spokes. Once you've adapted to this, more adjustment is needed in order to get yourself familiar with the clever 3D digital instrument cluster, which all but the entry-level 2008 models feature, and that's meant to improve your reaction times, but initially it'll probably have the opposite effect. At this point, you're probably going to want to know a bit more about your various powertrain choices, petrol, diesel or electric, which Peugeot wants you to select between in the same way as you choose a trim level. And we'll get to the experience that's offered up by the all-electric E2008 version that we're trying here in just a moment. But we'll start off with the variants that more customers are likely to want, what the French brand calls the thermic options, internal combustion engine models, which are primarily based around the PSA Group's usual petrol-powered 1.2 litre 3-cylinder PureTech unit, since only 1 in 20 2008 buyers will want to fuel from the black pump. There is no part electrification of that petrol power plant of the mild hybrid kind that Ford has implemented into the EcoBoost unit, which is used by the competing Puma. This 2008's PureTech turbo engine doesn't quite have the characterful thrum of that rival power plant either, although it will still fizz happily up to the red line if you find yourself running late and need to gun it a bit. Yes, even in base 100 horsepower form, where the engine offers up a lovely warble as it goes about its business and gives a decent shove from low revs. A drive mode button on the center console promises more than it delivers, just normal and eco settings, the latter being a mode you'll need to stay away from if you want to get anywhere close to the quoted performance stats for this power plant, 62 miles an hour in 10.9 seconds on the way to 115 mph. This PureTech 100 unit comes only with 6-speed manual transmission, but if you pay the extra for the PureTech 130 version of that engine, the manual version of that uprated 130 HP unit improves those stats to 8.9 seconds and 122 miles an hour. Then you'll be offered the option of EAT 8-speed automatic transmission, and that comes with steering wheel paddles and extra sport and manual drive modes. Use of that auto transmission is mandatory with the top 155 horsepower version of the 1.2 litre petrol unit, which is also available in the very top GT version of this car. The performance stats for the engine there are 62 miles an hour in 8.2 seconds en route to 129 mph. We can't really see much of a motivation to pay the significant premium Peugeot wants for the only other thermic power plant on offer, 1.5 litre Blue HDI 100 diesel, even though that 100 horsepower unit is class-leadingly clean and economical. Suppose it might be more suitable in the unlikely event that you were planning to do something like tow a small caravan behind your 2008, but even in that scenario you might note that the 1.2 tonne braked towing capacity of that diesel is no different from that of the turbo petrol unit. The performance figures are very similar too. 62 from rest occupies 11.4 seconds en route to 115 miles an hour. Right, that's covered off those combustion engine powertrain options. Now let's get on to what's on offer from this E2008 model's full battery powered setup. Here, as with this model's PSA group cousins, the Vauxhall Mokka-e and the DS3 Crossback E-Tense, a 50 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery is mated to a 100 kilowatt electric motor, putting out 136 bhp and working through the usual single-speed automatic transmission that you get with EVs. Like all electric vehicles, this one develops all its torque at once. There's 260 newton meters of it, and the car simply hurls itself away from rest. It takes just a couple of seconds to crest the 30 miles an hour mark, and 60 is reached in only 8.5 seconds, disguising the fact that, also like all other EVs, this zero emissions variant does have a bit of a weight problem. That drivetrain adds over 300 kilos of bulk. That other small battery-powered little SUVs manage that issue a little better is evidenced by the fact that this E2008's WLTP rated driving range, which is quoted at between 191 and 206 miles, is easily improved on by rivals like Volkswagen's ID4 and the Skoda Enyaq iV. Still, all of it does represent a brave new world for forward-thinking customers in the compact SUV segment looking to make the still rather expensive switch into all-electric motoring. It seemed like only yesterday, after all, that a fully charged small EV could only manage around half the kind of range that you'll get from this one. Of course, you certainly won't achieve anything like that kind of operating capability if you get anywhere near to this EV's quoted 93 miles an hour top speed. Or if you habitually drive your E2008 in the sport setting, which is necessary to release the full 136 bhp power output just mentioned. The quoted range figure will only be distantly possible if you instead engage the somewhat restrictive Eco mode, which drops power output right down to 83 brake horsepower. That's the setting you'll use in an E2008 around town, and that's an environment in which it makes a strange polyphonic sound at low speeds to warn unwary pedestrians of its impending approach. Above 18 miles an hour, all you can hear is a bit of tyre roar from the eco-moulded Michelin rubber. Overall, whatever flavour of 2008 takes your fancy, petrol, diesel or electric, we think you'll find there's plenty to like here. Given that this is a small, fashion-led SUV, it almost goes without saying that there's no four-wheel drive option anywhere in the range, but on the combustion engine models specified in mid-range Allure Trim, Peugeot is still offering the option of its advanced grip control system, and that might be worth considering. By braking a wildly spinning front wheel, this setup works with the standard ESP stability control program to transfer torque to the tyre with most traction, and this, along with standard mud and snow tyres, is enough to enable negotiation of some surprisingly sticky situations. Now true, because this 2008 has relatively little ground clearance, it's rated at 160 mils for this Mark II model. That's even less than the previous generation model had. Advanced grip control won't ultimately enable this car to go any further than its compact crossover counterparts off-road, but it will certainly give you a useful advantage in slippery car parks or on country lanes during the next snowy snap. Control of the setup is via a provided rotary knob, which offers dedicated modes to deal with either snow, mud or sand. Or indeed, you can turn all the electronics off completely, as you might want to do when, for example, you're braking on gravel or slush, when locked up wheels can actually build up a little buffer in front of them to help you stop. Ultimately though, a typical 2008 customer won't be someone wanting to push tractional boundaries or revel in the improved drive dynamics of this Mark II model. Their perception of driving enjoyment will more likely lie with a lowering rather than a raising of the heartbeat. That sort of thing will appeal to you if you're the kind of person who wants to have as little input into the road-going experience as possible. Should that be the case, you'll really like the impressive refinement that's evident even in the combustion engine version of this Peugeot, and they'll make you feel more comfortable about the prospect of potentially attempting a long highway trip in one. And for that kind of journey, you might also possibly be rather interested in the limited Level 2 style driving autonomy that's possible to build into the plusher versions of this car. With this, a combination of adaptive cruise control and lane positioning assist mean that on a long highway trip, virtually all the steering, braking and throttle work will be done for you. This is just another example of the way that the design of compact crossovers like this one has moved forward. from a small SUV packaged in a way proving that beyond doubt. This second generation 2008 had what its predecessor lacked, a real sense of stylistic identity. Here, designer Gilles Vidal has evolved the shape of his second generation 208 Supermini into that of a bold, robust and confident SUV. If you want this car, it'll be because you think it really stands out, and you'll be right. As with the 208, the front end is probably the most immediately arresting part of the design, with these distinctive LED corner fangs that flow up into the 3-claw LED headlight signature. Look further up and you'll note the paired back windscreen, which makes the carved bonnet more horizontal. The front bumper is designed as a single contour, incorporating a central waterfall-style convex surfaced radiator grille bearing the Peugeot Lion. This all-electric E208 variant is distinguished from what Peugeot calls the thermic-powered models by the adoption of body colouring for this grille and a more unusual dichroic finish for the Lion badge, which appears to change colour depending on your viewing angle. At the rear, the avant-garde theme continues with exact design and tautly drawn shaping. The 3D tail lamps again feature that 3-claw signature, and they're linked by a black band running the width of the boot lid, emphasising this second generation 2008 model's extra width. This rear diffuser features this gloss black finish and looks particularly good if you ignore the darker colours and specify one of the brighter shades instead, maybe orange fusion or perhaps a more expensive triple coat finish like this vertigo blue shade we have here. From the side, an owner of the previous model might particularly notice the increase in size here. 4.3 metres long, this second generation design is a significant 15 centimetres longer than its predecessor, which now makes this Supermini derived Peugeot longer than a Volkswagen Golf. There is also plenty in this muscular profile to catch the eye, with a high belt line, various repeating triangular lines and lots of intricate surfacing that must have made the panel pressing a real technical feat. Wheel sizes on the mainstream variants are either 16 or 17 inches, but top versions, which are recognisable by their diamond black roof colouring, feature these bigger diamond cut 18-inch rims, which do better fill the arches. On these premium versions, the wheel rims are adorned with screw-in customisable inserts, which apparently improve the aerodynamics and also reduce curb weight by 4 kilos. Of course, the major contributor to the reduction of curb weight lies with the way the vehicle platform is structured, and in this regard, this Peugeot starts out with a big advantage thanks to its use of the sophisticated CMP, or Common Modular Platform chassis we've already seen in 2 other recent PSA Group small SUV products, the DS3 Crossback and the Vauxhall Mocha. This chassis is 30 kilos lighter than the PF1 underpinnings that we used in the previous model, and as a result of that, an entry-level version of this 2008 tips these scales at well under 1.2 tonnes, which, to give you some segment perspective, makes it around 100 kilos lighter than, say, a rival Ford Puma. The modularity of this platform is what allows this E2008 model's full electric powertrain to be built in without any exterior bodywork changes. Peugeot believes visual familiarity is what the majority of EV buyers want. Volkswagen, which has just launched its standalone ID electric sub-brand, clearly thinks very differently. Right, time to take a look inside. Now, too often with futuristic looking cars, you find the designers have run out of ideas or budget by the time it comes to the interior. Is that the case here? No, in fact, this cabin is in many ways the most innovative part of the car. It reminds you just how stuck in the rut most other small SUVs are in terms of design. Peugeot has been getting us used to this futuristic feel in stages. Their so-called iCockpit format, where you view the instrument binnacle over the upper rim of a tiny steering wheel rather than conventionally through the wheel spokes. That was a feature of the last 2008, and it continues again here. But this car's fresh interpretation of that design theme, and its generally much classier feel, takes things another further step forward. And we really like the two-tier fascia layout with its smart carbon trimmed concave inner section that curls around the edges of the cabin and on into the doors. It's all pretty much identical to what you get in a 208 Supermini, although here you sit a fraction higher, and that's not always a given in the design of small SUVs these days. The key thing your attention will be drawn towards immediately is this 3D instrument binnacle display, and it's standard from mid-range Allure Trim upwards, and it was derived from the futuristic setup that was first seen on the brand's Quartz concept car of 2014. Now this sees critical information like speed projected in hologram form from the inner roof of the instrument binnacle onto a piece of slanted perspex in the foreground. A button on the left of the steering wheel gives you 6 ways to format this setup, all of which feature fuel and temperature readouts, which respectively display at the left and the right hand extremities of the display, and feature also on a screen set further back. Basically, the different modes change what is projected into the middle. Minimum gives you a digital speedo. Dials add to that flanking analog style virtual speedo and rev counter gauges. The driving setting prioritizes a safety graphic. Navigation prioritizes a nav map. Then there are Personal 1 and Personal 2 settings, which add into the center section either trip computer data or a circular rev counter. Whichever setting you select, it's all very aircraft cockpit-like, and Peugeot says that the way that the data is displayed slightly closer to your eye line can improve reaction time by up to half a second at motorway speeds. Others mutter about form over function, as they always do with trendy new cabin technology. Peugeot's brand stablemate Citroën used to favour futuristic cabin features like this and then spoil it all with weird dash design and questionable quality, a mistake that stylist Gilles Vidal and his team have successfully avoided making here. In fact, if you like a sophisticated feel, you might well find this to be the most attractive interior offered by any current compact crossover. Certainly perceived quality is at the upper end of the kind of thing you'll find in this class, although much of that relies on acres of shiny piano black plastic that will quickly scratch and smear unless you're extremely careful. As is now usual in any modern car, the centre of the fascia is dominated by an infotainment touchscreen, which at the base of the range is 7 inches in size for 2008 buyers, but in plusher models it's offered in the larger 10-inch form that we have here. The display resolution and response isn't quite as good as you'll find with VW Group products, nor is its menu structure as clear and easy to use, but we do like the way that it's subtly angled towards the driver, and it has a neatly extended part in its lower frame that you can rest your finger on between screen jabs. Plus, as you'd expect, all the important incorporated elements are present and correct. There's a decent DAB audio system, there's Bluetooth and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto mirroring for your smartphone. As standard, this bigger 10-inch monitor includes navigation too. That's Peugeot's very complete connected 3D package, and it indicates traffic conditions and risk zones in real time. Plus, with this larger screen, there are specific EV displays on this E2008 variant. All of that's welcome, but the inclusion of climate functions on the screen isn't. Climate functions can be shown at the edge of the display, but it feels really counterintuitive to have to switch away from whatever you're looking at every time you want to properly change the cabin climate or alter the fan speed. And more worryingly, the task requires you to take your eyes away from the road for longer than would otherwise be necessary. Now, the physical controls below this monitor aren't ideal in this regard either. These 7 stylized piano-style keys certainly look rather nice, but they include a row of touch sensitive icons behind them, and that is odd because firstly it means you can learn to operate by touch where only half the things are, and secondly because the touch sensitive buttons are easily tapped by mistake when you're using the front keys, plus they can collect condensation from the air conditioning. The benefit of not having physical centre stack climate controls, the sort of thing that you do get in this car's Vauxhall Mocha cousin, to be frank isn't huge. The space that these would normally occupy is used instead by a smart lidded box, the inner box lid of which has a pen recess and inside of which is the wireless phone charging mat we referenced earlier. The provision of that compartment does at least mean that you can charge your handset out of the sight of prying eyes rather than leaving it exposed in this open area just ahead of the gear stick. Now this incorporates a 12-volt socket and which has twin USB points nearby. The designers have forgotten to add in an overhead sunglasses compartment. That's probably because they wanted to make space for this optional panoramic cielo glass roof, which has a rather stiff manual blind. But there are decently sized door bins with angled bottle holders. You get a small open cubby by the driver's right knee here, and there are ticket clips on the sun visors there. As usual with right-hand drive versions of French cars though, the glove box is halved in size by the fuse box. It really is time that Gallic makers sorted that issue out. Avoid the entry-level active trim levels and you get these twin cup holders near the gear stick, behind which is a deep, narrow lidded box between the seats with a lift-out coin tray. What else? Well, we don't think many will particularly like this oversized gear knob, and taller drivers might find the pedals placed a little too close for comfort, although there's plenty of seat height and steering column adjustability. The seats are reasonably comfortable and attractively stitched, but it's disappointing that you can't add lumbar support into them unless pricey leather upholstery is specified. Build quality from the Slovakian factory is fine, but this cabin can't quite replicate the sheer solidity of a Volkswagen Group product in this segment. Still, there are nice touches to compensate. The stitching on the front door cards looks classy, and the way that little speakers have been built into the A-pillars, that's very clever. All-round visibility is not bad. It could be better though. There are decently sized door mirrors, but the thickness and angle of the windscreen pillars obscure more of what you can see each side at junctions than would be the case in, say, a rival Volkswagen T-Cross. Plus, the rear C-pillar and the tapering roofline also reduce your rear three-quarter vision. Fortunately though, rear parking sensors are standard across the range. You will have to have this electronic parking brake on most models though. The manual parking brake lever that we'd prefer is fitted only on the base active trim models. All of this, as we've been saying, is much as it would be with a 208 Supermini. But when we tested that car, it was when it came to the back seat that things began to unravel a little. Now, we've higher hopes in this regard here though, mainly because this 2008 is a useful 245mm longer than its small hatch showroom stablemate and 141mm longer than the first generation 2008 design. In fact, at 4.3 meters long, this car is actually only 150mm shorter than a mid-sized 3008 from the next segment up, which makes this 2008 one of the largest contenders in the class for compact crossovers. To give you some segment perspective, a Volkswagen T-Cross measures in at 4 meters 11 centimeters, a Ford Puma is 4 meters 20 centimeters, and a Renault Captur is 4 meters 23 centimeters. Predictably, it's a lot easier to get into than a 208 thanks to an extra 100 mils of roof height, but entry for, say, our older folk still won't be as easy as it is on some small SUV rivals due to the high sills and the fact that the 208 model's rather narrow door openings remain. Take a pew on this rear seat and you'll find it's a lot less pokey than is the case in a 208, not only due to this SUV's extra roof height, but also because legroom is ample by class standards, and that's helped by a 65mm wheelbase length increase over the equivalent Supermini model. Not so good is the relative narrowness of the cabin, which would mean that a trio of adults back here would need to be on very friendly terms indeed. But then, how often would you really cram 5 adults into a car of this size. It is a little disappointing to find that this bench doesn't slide fore and aft like it does in a rival Renault Captur and a Volkswagen T-Cross too, but that's predictable because this Peugeot's designers had to take account of the fact that in the full electric version of this model, the variant that in fact we're testing here, the powertrain's battery would need to be placed beneath this back seat. It certainly helps that the designers have done the best they could with what they had to work with. The curvature of the front seat backs is designed to improve knee room. There's a notably low central transmission tunnel, and there's lots of room to poke your feet beneath those front chairs. Bear in mind though that if you specify a model with this optional panoramic Cielo glass roof, headspace will be slightly compromised by this oddly angled ceiling section. You get nicely presented stitched door cards, seat back pockets, and on most models, unusually for a car in this class, connectivity points back here. From mid-range Allure Trim upwards, there are actually 2 USB ports provided, a standard feature lacking on many luxury cars we test. Finally, let's take a look in the boot, which is 434 litres in size. That's 12 litres bigger than the previous generation model and 123 litres larger than the trunk you'll get in a 208. That's a capacity figure that remains about average by class standards. To give you some segment perspective, a rival Nissan Juke offers 422 litres, a Ford Puma 456 litres. With those models though, the designers didn't have to allow for BEV technology. Peugeot feels pretty proud that there's no compromise in cargo area size if you do go for this battery-powered E2008 variant, which must have taken really quite a lot of development effort. There is quite a high loading lip here, which you'll especially notice if you have an entry-level active variant, which lacks this Plusher model's standard adjustable height boot floor. There's no further space beneath the floor, but that's because combustion engine models provide a space-saver spare wheel as standard, unless you opt for the focal hi-fi system, in which case you lose that. Floor tie-down points have been forgotten, but on the right there's a boot light. It is quite a usable, squarically sized space, but as usual in this class, there's no seat folding cleverness. Stuff like adjustable seat backs for awkwardly shaped loads, a ski hatch, or a 40-20-40 rear bench split. You would think the designs in the compact crossover segment might be building some of that kind of stuff in by now. So instead, there's just a straightforward 60-40 rear bench split. Once the seats are folded, there's 1,467 litres of capacity when you load up to the roof. You might be wondering what the premium is to choose a Supermini-based SUV over a Supermini. Well, let's take a look in this case. Now, Peugeot will want a premium from you at between £2,300 and £3,000, depending on variant, if you are going to choose this 2008 SUV rather than its 208 Supermini showroom stablemate. Ever wondered about the price of fashion? Well, you've got it right there. And given that the 208 is one of the market's, well, slightly pricier volume branded Superminis, that means that this 2008 isn't inexpensive. There are 6 trim levels: Active, Active Premium, Allure, Allure Premium, and then the 2 sportier looking options, GT line, which is what we have here, and the top GT variant. Peugeot wants you to pick a powertrain in the same way that you'd select one of those trim options, whether that be petrol, diesel or electric. Now, from launch, the combustion engine models, they were priced from just under £21,000, but you're rather more likely to be spending in the £23,000 to the £26,000 bracket for the kind of engine and spec package that you'll want, with asking figures for the petrol and diesel models rising up to around, well, £32,500 if you want the top GT spec. Most current customers, though, buy using PCP finance, and this higher quality Mark II model's better residuals mean that its costs here should be pretty competitive. For the all-electric E2008 variant, of course, which is what we're trying here, you'll need quite a bit more. Even after the £3,000 government plug-in grant has been deducted from this E2008 model's mildly alarming initial purchase price, you'll still need to think in terms of a premium of around £5,500 over the top PureTech 130 E88 petrol model, or just under £7,000 more than the equivalent Blue HDI 100 diesel. So your commitment to the polar ice cap is going to be sorely tested. Despite that though, Peugeot obviously thinks it's going to sell quite a few E2008s. The prediction is 20% of the total model mix, because this powertrain is available with every trim level. Even in base active form, an E2008 will set you back around £29,000. Let's return to what Peugeot calls its thermic models though, and drill down a bit into engine and transmission choice with those. Now most are going to be happy with the volume PureTech 100 petrol unit and 6-speed manual transmission. That's just as well, because otherwise your green pump fueled choices with this car are rather limited. Your other mainstream petrol option is a 130 HP version of the same unit, which attracts a price premium over the base petrol engine of around £1,200. But it does have the advantage of being orderable with the £1,600 option of Peugeot's smooth shifting 8-speed E88 automatic gearbox. At the very top of the range, with plush GT trim, Peugeot also offers that same 1.2 litre 3-cylinder PureTech engine in uprated 155 HP form, paired only with that E88 auto box, although that'll be a rare choice indeed. Your other internal combustion engine 2008 model alternative requires you to turn a blind eye to the current Enviro zeitgeist. That's the Blue HDI 100 diesel, which Peugeot can't bring itself to delete from the range. This price is from around £22,000, and it only comes with a 6-speed manual gearbox. The brand expects only 5% of 2008 buyers to choose that. Enough on the range structure, let's position this 2008 for you within Peugeot's own model lineup before we get into price matching it with small SUVs from other brands. Now we'd point out that some versions of Peugeot's family hatch-based 308 SW Estate, which theoretically is a larger class of car, cost very little more than a 2008. A 308 SW Blue HDI 100 diesel, for example, costs only £500 more than a 2008 with exactly the same engine, and it offers vastly more interior room and boot space. But we're now back to discussing the price of fashion, aren't we? If you're considering a 2008 though, you probably won't be thinking about compact estates as an alternative. Instead, you'll be wanting to know how this car's pricing compares to obvious alternatives in the fashionable small crossover segment. Now, back in 2013, at its original introduction, the first generation version of this Peugeot had very few rivals. But by the time of the launch of this Mark II model in late 2019, that number had grown to well over 20 B-segment SUV competitors. So, how does it stack up against them? Not too badly, as it turns out, provided you're prepared to accept the need to pay a small premium for the fact that this Peugeot offers a higher quality interior than most of the obvious alternatives at this price point. Think in terms of needing to find around £1,000 to £1,500 more than you'd need for an equivalent Renault Captur or Nissan Juke, and you'll be in about the right ballpark. That'll also be the kind of premium that you'll have to find if you compare against the VW Group entrants in this segment. That's the Volkswagen T-Cross, the Skoda Kamiq and the Seat Arona. And the same kind of premium also applies if you compare against the two Korean class entries. That's the Kia Stonic and Hyundai's Kona, although this pair won't offer you as much space or for luggage or rear seat folk. As you'd expect, this Peugeot's pricing is pretty similar to its similarly engineered PSA Group small SUV cousins, the DS3 Crossback and the Vauxhall Mokka. But also, as you'd expect, it costs a fraction more than the two PSA Group small crossover models which share this 2008 model's engines, but not its sophisticated CMP platform, these being the Vauxhall Crossland and the Citroën C3 Aircross. What about other options? Well, contenders like Ford's Puma, the Volkswagen T-Roc, the Mazda CX-30, the Jeep Renegade, the Audi Q2, the Toyota Yaris Cross, the Honda HR-V and Suzuki's Vitara and S-Cross models, they're quite comparably priced against this 2008. A Toyota CHR, which because of its hybrid engine costs from around £26,000, that might be an option against upper spec 2008 models too. Obviously, if you want to pay significantly less than Peugeot's asking here, then there is enough choice in this class to ensure that you easily can. But if you do, and you go beyond the competitors that we've already mentioned, then you'll probably end up with an older design, something like a Ford EcoSport, a Fiat 500X, or a Mitsubishi ASX. And they'd be clunkier to drive and pricier to run. If you want to pay a lot less for a small crossover of this kind, then there's the MG ZS, the SsangYong Tivoli and the Dacia Duster, but then of course you'll very much get what you don't pay for. Finally, a quick word about the value proposition of this battery-powered E2008. And we mentioned earlier that pricing for this zero-emissions variant started from around £29,000 and it runs right up to just over £35,000 for the top-spec GT variant. That's about the same amount as you'd pay for this Peugeot's two identically engineered PSA Group cousins, the Vauxhall Mokka E and the DS3 Crosspec E-Tense. Other all-electric small SUV options in the same kind of pricing ballpark include the Skoda Enyaq and the Volkswagen ID.4. You would save a little by opting for an MG ZS EV, but those compact EV crossover models have much smaller batteries, so they need more frequent charging. But it's the combustion engine 2008 variants that are our focus here. If, having considered the value proposition that we've outlined concerning these, you're seduced by this Gallic model's style proposition and you then conclude that it is this Peugeot that you really want, then you're obviously going to want to know just how generous this brand has been when it comes to that all-important standard specification. Well, let's see. Even entry-level active variants come pretty well equipped with 16-inch silver L-Born alloy wheels, rear parking sensors, eco LED headlights, powered heated mirrors, a colour-coded rear spoiler, a Fatcham Category 1 alarm and a reasonable tally of camera safety kit, which we'll come on to in just a moment. Inside, in an active spec variant, there's air conditioning, a leather-stitched steering wheel, a trip computer and programmable cruise control with a speed limiter. Infotainment is taken care of by a 7-inch high-definition HD capacitive colour centre dash touchscreen featuring Apple CarPlay, Android Auto smartphone mirroring, Bluetooth and a decent quality 6-speaker DAB audio system. Across the range, 2008 buyers get the benefit of the My Peugeot app package, which allows you to check data on your car, things like fuel consumption, maintenance or servicing alerts. It can also save the location of the car, remembering where you parked it. The app's homepage gives you essential data like average consumption and mileage, plus you can also use this app to look at previous maintenance appointments and to book service visits. The My Peugeot app additionally includes a range of specific services for E2008 owners, including remote settings and public charging solutions. Anyway, that covers everything you can expect from a base active trimmed model, but the majority of 2008 customers are going to want to buy in a little further up the range. There is an active premium trim level that gives you connected 3D navigation, which includes traffic conditions and risk zones in real time, and includes a 3-year subscription to TomTom Live services. Plus, Active Premium also gives you power folding mirrors, LED front fog lamps, and an electrochrome rear view mirror. But most 2008 customers tend to start their search with mid-range Allure Trim. Now these volume variants are recognisable by gloss black finishing on the B-pillars and the rear bumper, plus dark tinted rear side and tailgate windows, gloss black roof rails and larger 17-inch wheels of a smarter Salamanca diamond cut design. At this level in the range, you also get power folding mirrors, LED front fog lamps, front parking sensors and auto wipers. Inside in the 2008 Allure variant, the key inclusion is the 3D iCockpit configurable 3D head-up instrument panel that we fully briefed you on in our design and build section. Plus, you'll find the cabin marked out by the addition of part leather effect, seat upholstery, an electrochrome rearview mirror, and automatic climate control functionality for the air conditioning. You get quite a few more USB sockets at this level in the range too, one more in the front and the addition of 2 in the back. Plus there's a modular adjustable height boot floor. Now what you don't get with ordinary Allure trim is that connected 3D navigation system that we mentioned earlier, but you can have that if you pay a little more for Allure Premium trim, which displays it on a larger 10-inch centre dash screen. So that covers what you get with the 2 mainstream trim levels, Active and Allure. Quite a few prospective 2008 buyers though will be tempted by the sportier look of GT line trim. Now 2008 variants of that sort are recognisable by their diamond black roof finishing, gloss black door mirror shells, the gloss black diffuser effect trim for the lower part of the rear bumper and the diamond black rear spoiler. As for wheels, well, Bund style 18-inch two-tone diamond cut alloy rims feature at this level in the range, which look great, but as we remarked in our driving experience section, they have quite a big effect on ride quality, so try before you buy. You have to stretch right up to this level in the range to get Peugeot's full LED headlights with their distinctive signature 3-claw tooth design, plus they feature smart beam assist, which means that they dip themselves automatically at night. Inside, in a 2008 GT line model, you're treated to 8 colour personalisable ambient lighting, plus there's lime green interior stitching, which also features on seats upholstered in a tri-material combination of Cappy faux leather and Isabella cloth. There's also a higher quality Mistral perforated leather steering wheel, a frameless rear view mirror, a smartphone charging plate, front and rear carpet mats, and a VisioPark 180-degree colour reversing camera. And you get the 10-inch centre dash touchscreen we mentioned earlier with its 3D navigation system. That only leaves the top GT spec, identifiable by its Evisa style of 18-inch alloy wheel rim, and on the petrol variants by double chrome exhaust pipes. Inside, GT spec gets you plus part Alcantara upholstery, keyless entry and a panoramic glass roof. There's also an extra level of automated driving assistance at this level, and adaptive cruise control with a stop and go function, plus a few extra camera safety features we'll cover off in a moment. Right, enough with all the standard features fitted across the various trim levels. What about options? Well, there are actually very few, because Peugeot would like buyers wanting to embellish things a bit to simply progress another level or 2 up the trim hierarchy. There are a few key options though, and perhaps the most significant one, an advanced grip control system which improves front wheel traction in slippery conditions, is for some reason only available if you choose one of the mid-range Allure trim levels. What else? Well, avoid entry-level trim and you'll also be able to specify the expensive option of full grain leather upholstery in your 2008, complete with powered seat adjustment and a seat massage function. Annoyingly, you have to choose this pricey option if you're to get seat lumbar support in this car at all. With the Active and Allure variants, you can add in a reversing camera and a smartphone charging plate. With Allure and GT line trim, you can add in keyless entry. With GT line spec, you can add in a Cielo panoramic opening glass roof, and with GT line and GT models, there's the option of Peugeot's premium focal audio system. Across the range, you'll be able to buy a subscription to TomTom Live services to upgrade your infotainment system's capabilities, and there's a SpeedCam Danger Zones subscription available too. Bear in mind that, like most brands these days, Peugeot penalises you on paint choice. Unless you choose to have your 2008 finished in metallic orange fusion, then you have to pay your dealer extra for your choice of colour, even if you go for the rather basic solid Bianca white shade that can't be had on an E2008. You're probably more likely though to want one of the various metallic shades, or maybe one of the special signature or pearlescent paint colours that really suit this car, like the eye-catching triple coat Vertigo blue finish we have here. Finally, a specific word about this E2008 model. We find it annoying that Peugeot refuses to supply a 3-pin charging lead as standard with an EV variant, but wants instead to charge you nearly £500 more for it. Yes, of course, you'd never ideally want to plug into a domestic supply with a thing like that. But in operating an E2008, there might be times during which you'd have to, say when you're staying at a friend's house or in a B&B overnight. At such times, a 3-pin lead would be essential. See if you can get your dealer to throw that in as part of the deal, is our advice. It's also worth mentioning that if your property or your workplace happens to have a 3-phase electricity supply, it might be worth paying extra, £300 including VAT, to have your E2008 standard 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger upgraded to 11 kilowatt spec, so that charging time can be significantly reduced from 7.5 hours to just 5. Let's finish with a look at safety. You'd expect a modern Supermini-based SUV these days to come with some sort of autonomous braking system fitted as standard across the range, and this 2008 doesn't disappoint. The active safety brake system is standard fit, and it works at speeds between 3 and 53 miles an hour, scanning the road ahead in search of potential collision hazards. If one's detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or you aren't able to, then at speeds below 19 miles an hour, your 2008 will autonomously brake itself to a complete stop with 0.9 G of braking, avoiding the obstacle. At speeds of between 19 and 53 miles an hour, speed will be reduced by up to 14 miles an hour. In its standard form, the system can specifically identify vehicles and pedestrians, but only in daylight. Other standard safety features include lane keeping assist with road edge detection, which alerts you if you drift out of your lane and applies subtle corrective lock to steer you back to where you ought to be. Like the active safety brake setup, we've found that this feature works smoothly and unobtrusively, with a refreshing lack of too many jerks, beeps and bongs. What else is standard in terms of safety camera kit? Well, there's a driver's attention warning, which works at speeds upwards of 40 miles an hour and monitors your driving reactions for drowsiness, which, if it's detected, will prompt you to stop for a restorative coffee. Plus, it'll automatically warn you to take a break if you've been driving for more than a couple of hours. There's also traffic sign recognition. Now that pictures speed signs as you pass them and then displays them on the dash. And it can even recognise stop and no entry signs. Buyers also get the brand's Peugeot Connect and SOS system built into the car. Now that will automatically alert the emergency services with your exact GPS location in an accident. More usual safety inclusions that of course feature here include ISOFIX child seat fastenings on the outer rear seats, a tyre pressure monitoring system, hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards on uphill junctions, and twin front, side and curtain airbags, although unfortunately there's no driver's knee airbag. Plus of course all the usual electronic assistance for stability and traction control. There's cornering brake control for extra stability through the turns, and a drag torque control feature that stops destabilisation of the car, which would otherwise occur if you were to suddenly lift off the throttle or change down to too low a gear on a slippery road. What else should we tell you? Maybe that the 5-star Euro NCAP showing of the previous generation model wasn't replicated this time around. This Mark II design's 4-star showing, despite vastly improved safety standards, reflects the fact that the NCAP test is a lot tougher these days. Presumably the NCAP testers took a dim view of the fact that, rather disappointingly, the active safety brake, autonomous braking setup that we mentioned earlier is only offered in a downgraded form with base spec active trim models. You have to buy in from mid-range Allure Trim to get active safety brake in a form that allows it to work at night and specifically to detect cyclists. As I mentioned earlier, from GT line trim upwards, you get smart beam assistance, which automatically dips your headlights for you at night. The top E2008 GT model builds on that with active blind spot monitoring, which alerts you if you're just about to dangerously pull out when there's a vehicle in your blind spot. The GT model's capabilities are further built on with a modest level of level 2 style driving autonomy. Now Peugeot's approach to this is similar to the kind of thing you'll find in top versions of the rival Renault Captur, using an adaptive cruise control system with an integrated stop and go function, which, if you you come across a tailback, will automatically slow you down to a stop and then start you off again when the traffic moves. Now this setup works in conjunction with lane positioning assist, which centers the car in the middle of the roadway lane, and that means that with those two features working on a long highway trip, virtually all of the steering, the braking and the throttle work will be done for you. On Allure and GT line variants, you can add in adaptive cruise control and lane positioning assist as a combined option. On a GT line automatic model, you can option in active blind spot monitoring too. Small PSA group hatches of the modern era usually deliver a frugal WLTP rated running cost showing, aided by efficient engine technology and by relatively light weight. So it is once more here, aided in this case by the continuing use of the French conglomerate's latest CMP small car platform, plus extra touches like a seat redesign and the replacement of the previous steel bonnet with an aluminium one. Now, unlike some rivals in the compact SUV segment, Peugeot hasn't tried to embellish its mainstream engines with mild hybrid electrification, but the PureTech petrol unit that most will want here still delivers a decent set of stats. In volume, 100 horsepower manual form, it returns up to 52 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and up to 125 grams per kilometre of CO2. Which, for reference, is slightly better than a rival mild hybrid-powered Ford Puma can manage. That Ford no doubt hobbled slightly by its extra 100 kilos of curb weight. Additional curb weight, of course, is the reason why an SUV will cost you more to run than a comparable Supermini. Now this 2008 tips the scales at approximately 208 kilos more than its 208 showroom stablemate, which sounds like a lot, but it doesn't actually translate into too much more of a running cost downside. Not usually anyway. 2008 PureTech 100 variant will go just a mile less in terms of fuel consumption, and it puts out only 4 grams per kilometre more of CO2 than its 208 equivalent. There is quite a lot more of a difference if you switch your attention instead to the PureTech 130 EAT8 Auto version that urban bound or older folk will want. That manages up to 46.6 mpg and up to 141 grams per kilometre. This for some reason being around 5 miles per gallon and 14 grams per kilometre down on its direct 208 equivalent. A 2008 PureTech 130 manual model manages up to 50.6 mpg and up to 132 grams per kilometre of CO2. Switch your attention to the 2008 Blue HDI 100 diesel variant and there's less reason to crunch the stats because few rivals in this segment now offer derivatives that drink from the black pump. But even if the competition was fierce amongst diesel-powered small SUVs, you'd have to think that this 2008 Blue HDI model will be well placed to face it down, thanks to a strong combined cycle fuel return of up to 62.7 mpg, 8 miles per gallon down on the equivalent 208, and a CO2 reading of up to 118 grams per kilometre. That's 14 grams per kilometre down. The PSA people certainly seem to have a lead in diesel technology. Their black pump fueled units feature a clever 3-step after treatment system that's designed to better eliminate the 4 nasty pollutants that diesel units usually put out, namely unburned hydrocarbons, carbon monoxide, nitrogen oxides and particulates. The first stage sees the unwanted hydrocarbon and carbon monoxide elements converted into harmless water and carbon dioxide. In the second stage, that nasty nitrogen oxide also gets converted into water via a selective catalytic reduction process using the urea and water mixture AdBlue. Now you'll need to get that topped up every 12,500 miles. And finally, in the third step, a particulate emissions filter eliminates virtually all particulates at a stroke. For some though, thinking about fuel consumption and smoky emissions will be all very yesteryear in these days of melting polar ice caps, and it's for those people that the battery-powered E2008 all-electric version of this car has been developed, and that's the model we're trying here today, with its 50 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery and 100 kilowatt electric motor. Now Peugeot's aim was for this EV to have a total ownership cost which is roughly equivalent to what you'd pay to buy and run an automatic version of the petrol model. Well, it's some way off that right at present. Its drivetrain claims to be state-of-the-art for a small SUV, although its WLTP rated range, quoted at between 191 and 206 miles, 11 less than an E208, is bettered in the class by a Volkswagen ID4, which in 52 kilowatt-hour form records up to 224 miles. It's also bettered by the Skoda Enyaq iV, which in 62 kilowatt-hour form manages up to 260 miles. It's worth pointing out, though, that both those rivals can cost considerably more, the VW particularly so, and the more closely priced zero-emissions rival, the Hyundai Kona electric 39 kilowatt-hour model, is rated at 180 miles. The Mazda MX-30, meanwhile, can offer a WLTP range of only 124 miles. Bear in mind that, as with all EVs, the quoted range figure will drop considerably in winter weather or over long motorway journeys, in the case of the E2008 to around 132 miles. You can maximise range by checking out the e-coaching tool that's provided in a special part of the available My Peugeot app. If you are an E2008 owner, then you'll need to know that getting anywhere near the quoted range figure will necessitate staying in the powertrain's provided eco mode. Activating its sport mode setting will reduce your range by around 10%. What about charging? Well, as an EV owner, it goes without saying that you'll need off-street parking, and you'll need to get a wall box installed into your garage. Now, at the time of this test in autumn 2020, the cost of that was £856 ex VAT, although £500 of that will be covered by an available government grant. With the wall box in place, a full charge from empty takes 7.5 hours. If your property happens to have a three-phase electricity supply, though, and you pay extra £300 including VAT to have your E2008 standard 7.4 kilowatt onboard charger upgraded to 11 kilowatt spec, then that charging time can be reduced to just 5 hours. Don't bother with the 11 kilowatt onboard charger upgrade if you haven't got a three-phase power supply at home. With a normal electricity supply, an E2008 with that 11 kilowatt onboard charger would actually take longer to charge. Charging cost effectively will require proactive use of the charging timer, so you can tap into off-peak electricity rates. Now you can activate that via either the car's centre dash screen or via a special section of the My Peugeot app. The charging timer will also be useful for preconditioning the cabin of the car before you get into it. And that means you don't have to use valuable battery energy warming or cooling the cabin when you get in. What about charging your E2008 when you're out and about? Well, at the time of this test, the brand was offering buyers a free 6-month subscription to the Polar public charging network. That's the UK's largest. Finding public chargers ought to be straightforward. The TomTom navigation system will show them, or you can get rather more detail by bringing up the specialist Zap Map website on the centre dash screen here, and that's via the standard Apple CarPlay and Android Auto smartphone mirroring capability. With a public 50 kilowatt rapid charger, the replenishment time to charge from 15 to 80% is 45 minutes. If you're lucky enough to find a 100 kilowatt rapid charger, then that falls to 30 minutes. If the charger in question is a 22 kilowatt accelerated public charger, then the replenishment time will vary depending on whether you've paid a little extra to get that upgraded 11 kilowatt onboard charger that we mentioned earlier. Now, if you can do that, then you can reduce the 5-hour replenishment time with that kind of charger to just 3 hours and 20 minutes. At the other extreme, of course, if you happen to be somewhere where you can only charge from a domestic supply using an ordinary 3-pin plug and the optional 3-pin plug lead that costs extra with this car, then the charging time in that instance will be a yawning 20 hours. As an E2008 buyer, your dealer will also give you the option to pay a subscription for a so-called mobility pass. That will enable you to borrow a conventional petrol or diesel powered car from the brand for those times when you might need to undertake a longer or more complex journey, holiday times for example. What else might you need to know? Well, we'll switch back to the combustion engine 2008 models and tell you that there's the usual stop-start system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're stuck at the lights or when you're waiting in traffic. As a 2008 owner, you can download the useful My Peugeot app we mentioned earlier, via which you can take care of your car online and book maintenance visits, which, by the way, will be needed every year or 12,500 miles for the petrol engines and every year or 20,000 miles for the diesel unit. For this E2008, an initial garage visit is needed at 8,000 miles or after the first year of driving, whichever comes first. Then the first scheduled service will be needed at 16,000 miles or at the 2-year point, and then every 16,000 miles or 2 years thereafter. Whatever 2008 variant you choose, there are of course plenty of Peugeot outlets to choose from, so you should never be too far from one. On that subject, at point of purchase, you can get a prepaid Peugeot servicing plan for a relatively small monthly payment over 3 years. Now that will cover you for 3 services and an MOT, plus it'll give you 3 years of roadside assistance too. Insurance ratings are reasonably comparable with other mainstream brand models in this segment. You're looking at Group 13E for the base 1.2 litre 100 PS petrol unit, while the PureTech 130 engine is rated at between 17E and 19E depending on spec. The top PureTech 155 GT model rates at Group 23E. The Blue HDI Diesel 100 rates at between Groups 15E and 17E. And finally, this electric E2008 model, that is Group 31A for active trim, Group 32A for Allure spec, Group 33A for a GT line model, and Group 34A for this top GT. Residual values across the 2008 range are stronger than they used to be. They're a bit better than you get from, say, a Juke or a Capture, but they're perhaps not quite as good as would be managed by a well-looked-after version of a Volkswagen T-Cross or T-Roc. Specifically, after 3 years of use, independent experts reckon that you'd be looking at a retained value of around 46.5% for a combustion engine model, which would fall to around 44% with top GT spec, while this E2008 is projected to retain around 48% of its value over the same period. Finally, you'll need to know about warranties. In a class where Hyundai and Toyota offer standard 5-year warranties and Kia offers a 7-year package, Peugeot, like most of its other rivals, persists with the usual 3-year 60,000 mile package. Now that can be extended up to 5 years and 100,000 miles, but at extra cost. A year's free breakdown cover is included, along with a 6-year anti-corrosion guarantee. On an E2008, the battery is covered by a separate 8-year 100,000 mile warranty to 70% of its charge capacity. This second generation 2008 certainly makes a more overt style statement than before, with a design-led appeal that offers something refreshingly different in the class. If you're the kind of person who appreciates that sort of thing, then nothing else in this segment will satisfy you in quite the same way. Given all of that, it goes without saying that if you don't quite fit into the buying demographic that the brand has in mind, you may conceivably still want to shop elsewhere. If you just don't attach much of a value to all the style and technology that this car can offer, you might find it to be a touch on the pricey side, particularly as it doesn't have the hewn from granite quality of a Volkswagen T-Cross or the handling joie de vivre of a Ford Puma. Plus, you'll find other small SUVs with more flexible rear seat room and larger boots. And the fact that the climate controls aren't fully separated out from the central touchscreen, well, that's just annoying. Even those not immediately seduced by this little Peugeot's charms, though, might find their small crossover shortlist refreshed in no small measure by the inclusion of one of these. It's kept the sensible attributes that endeared its predecessor to plenty of buyers, and it has virtues which surely everyone would appreciate. Impressive efficiency from a likeable range of engines, and the useful option of this pricey but appealing full electric variant, should you want that. As with most models of this kind, on paper, the advantages being offered over a standard Supermini in space, styling and potential driving flexibility appear at first glance to be small. In practice though, they add up to a car that feels a far more rounded and more complete family tool. Of course, as we've just mentioned, there are things that Peugeot still could improve. Not everyone likes the unusual iCockpit steering wheel and instrument setup, for example. We think though that this car needs design innovations of that sort. Models of this kind ought to be fashionable, innovative and just a little controversial. If that's what you want in this segment, then you probably need to try this car.